afternoon light. The house faced due west, with breathtaking views of the turbulent Irish Sea that rolled in alternating shades of silver and grey towards the distant horizon before disappearing in a shimmering haze of iridescent blue. Closer by, a vast sage-green marsh hugged the coastline, which was washed by the incoming tide twice a day. On the afternoon of her memorable interview for a midwife vacancy, Libby had stood transfixed, watching the many squawking, squabbling seabirds wading in the shallows of the marsh. Redshanks, oyster-catchers, sandpipers, dunlins and piping curlews waiting expectantly for food, and crustaceans, worms and molluscs washed in by the tide. Quite unlike her usual confident, buoyant self, Libby that afternoon had been a bag of nerves. This was her first real job interview, her first real challenge. Though she had done well throughout her nurse's training course at Lancaster Infirmary and excelled on the midwife's course that followed, she had never faced an interview panel who might, for all her fine qualifications, reject her in favour of somebody with far more experience. Realistically, it had to be said that she didn't have much of that, apart from the work on the wards and community nursing twice a week that had formed part of her course. "Somebody older and more experienced will definitely stand a better chance than me," she recalled thinking to herself. But then her father's staunch words of support on the morning of her interview came back to her. "You'll be all right, lass. Just be yourself." Approaching Mary Vale's imposing front door, Libby had taken deep breaths, then thrown back her slender shoulders and knocked firmly. A plump, smiley-faced nun had immediately flung the door open. "You must be here for the interview," the young nun had said, with such a warm smile that Libby had immediately smiled back. "Come on in, I'm Sister Agnes," she'd continued in the same warm vein. "I'd offer you a cuppa and a few oatcakes, fresh from the oven, but Sister Ada and her husband, Dr. Reed, are waiting for you in Matron's office." Libby was intrigued. It's unusual, having a husband and wife team working together on the same premises, especially during wartime. Looking earnest, Sister Agnes explained, "Yes, for sure. Perhaps I should explain that Dr. Reed used to be our resident doctor before he was called up. Sadly, he was wounded in Tobruk. He lost his left hand, but he made a marvellous recovery. Now he's back to full health. Dr. Reed and his wife both work here. They share the job between them, on account of their little girl, who one of them looks after while the other works. It's a splendid set-up that suits everybody. We're blessed to have such a wonderful couple with us at Mary Vale." Following the kindly, chatty nun down a corridor with floors so highly polished the wooden tiles reflected the dust motes floating in the air, Libby had been led into an office where the interview panel was assembled. Libby would never forget how warm and welcoming the staff had been when she walked into the room, flushed with nerves. Comfortable though the atmosphere was, the questions the panel threw at Libby were demanding. Had she nursed patients on the postnatal ward suffering from puerperal fever? Yes, she had. Had Libby ever attended the birth of twins with complications? Yes, in the first year of her midwifery training. One of the twins had got stuck, and she'd had to perform an emergency forceps delivery. But she managed to answer all the questions as best she could, and when given the chance, told them all about her community work in Lancaster, an experience which had shaped her desire to do more community work, especially with the underprivileged in society. By the end of the interview, which was brought to a halt by an urgent call requesting Dr. Jamie's presence in the delivery room, Libby's eyes were alight with passion, and a small excited smile played around her full mouth. "Would it be useful for you to know something about the history of Mary Vale, Miss Godborough?" Matron asked, as the interview came to a close. "Yes, I'd love that," Libby enthused. "It's such a beautiful place in a lovely setting." "Well, it isn't just in its present guise that Mary Vale offers sanctuary to those in need. It has, in fact, done so for centuries." As Matron spoke, her face lit up with pride. The building stands on the foundations of an ancient Cistercian priory.